All right. Well, welcome to the Happy Farm D podcast. This is Chris Baechle, and I have Alex Barker with me today. How's it going, Alex?
Living the dream, buddy.
Yeah. Same here, man. Same here. So I guess today we're going to talk a little bit about coaching, pharmacist coach, what exactly we do at the Happy Farm D, what a pharmacist coach does, and share some stories and see where it takes us.
Chris, when was the first time you heard of a coach outside of the context of sports?
Career-wise in general, business-wise, not till my wife, when she found one for her business. She's a therapist and she was starting her own private practice and needed someone to kind of show her the ropes or just kind of guide her through it and, website, everything like that, how to find clients. So that was probably the first time. I honestly had never heard of it. Yeah, in general, besides sports, probably. Yeah, until
That's
then.
a good introduction. My introduction was in college when we had to sit through some, weird and wacky speakers. You know how colleges do that to students. And we listened to this one girl, and it was a really weird presentation. That's all I can remember from it. And then, she had mentioned that she's a life coach. And I was like, coaching people on life? Like, I've always been a skeptic, and if there's one person in the world that I'm skeptical of is a life coach. You're going to coach me about my life? Like, what does that mean? And why would anyone pay you for that? Like, you're just going to tell them what to do and like life is going to be better for them? That is weirdly weird. And for most of my college career, I remember occasionally seeing things like life coaches on like sitcoms and just people making fun of the idea. Like there's this British show called The Peep Show that's pretty vulgar, just FYI, but it's also very funny. And one of the main characters is a total schmuck, total loser, schmoozes on his friends, doesn't get a job, and he eventually becomes a life coach. And the whole premise is that he's made up the story that he coached the Queen of England, and it gets him into all sorts of trouble. But that's what I think a lot of people think of coaching with this in mind. Like there's this idea that you talk to someone who's done something and they coach you on how to do it. And so I think this is a great place to learn first, what is a coach and what do they do? And when I first was really introduced to coaching was this idea about business. When I was a resident, I had a 2-hour commute every single day, and it was awful. And I got really sick of the radio super fast. I mean, listening to Katy Perry is great once, maybe.
Yep. Yeah, I think I had when I used to drive to DC, I used to when I first started working with you, I had an hour and a half commute one way too, and I had like that free, I don't know, Sirius XM or Sirius XM subscription or whatever, and I think I heard. Eventually, I listened to it so much I started hearing the same songs like 5 times. It was bad. It was
it gets boring.
It does.
Yeah. Luckily, I had read a book that kind of piqued my interest about self-development. I read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And so I kind of fell down the rabbit hole of like, I got to read everything about this. What is this? And then I learned about business and I learned about passive income. And I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I learn about this when I was 14? Why?
I bring that up all the time. I feel like there should have been a personal finance or some kind of class.
Yeah.
Even middle school, high school, whatever, right? Just something that you could see from a fresh or new pair of eyes, away from your parents, because everyone has bad habits, right? And I feel like it's great to see like, okay, this is how it really should be done, or this is just a recommendation, but you can go whatever direction you want. But that's very true.
Right. What I learned was I could try to do business on my own, but I don't want to do this and waste a lot of my time. And that's how I got introduced to business coaching. And through talking with a lot of different coaches and kind of figuring out what my options were, I hired a coach $500 a month when I was making $2,700 a month as a resident. It was quite the stretch at the time, and I was married and I had a kid. But that investment in myself, has paid huge dividends over the years because of what I built and being able to pay off my house early and all of this sort of stuff. So what I learned through this is what a coach actually does is it helps you perform a transformation much faster than what you could on your own. They help you remain accountable to your goals. They help you problem solve and create confidence within yourself to solve those problems. They don't just tell you the answer. They create, creativity within yourself confidence to pursue ideas that maybe you're scared to do. And I learned through hiring, I don't know, maybe 12 coaches over the span of the last 6 years, that every single one of them has helped me transform in some small way to move into a new identity, a new way of doing business. They've helped me grow much faster than I would on my own. When we think about like coaching from a sports perspective, a coach usually provides guidance, step-by-step instruction. And that's, in my opinion, what is so wrong, particularly about pharmacy education, but about education system as a whole, that in order to get the right answer, there's a step-by-step formula. And life doesn't work that way and never has. And so what a coach does is helps you in those moments of figuring out from point A to point B, taking your unique situation and overcoming the obstacles that are in your path. But I'd rather read it from the man himself. This is Coaching for Performance. One of the founding fathers of the whole coaching profession is John Whitmore, who essentially took this point of view that in order to help tennis players perform better, they wouldn't necessarily tell them what they were doing wrong, but instead ask them questions, open-ended questions, to get them to open up about their own faults in their performance so that they would recognize them and improve on them. They didn't say, your backswing is off. They would ask them instead, what went wrong and what could you do better next time? And they found that these people that they coached performed significantly better. And then I believe they took this practice into skiing when they had never coached anyone in skiing. Exactly. And they saw the same results. This is kind of how the coaching profession was born.
I was going to say they started having people who weren't even experts in that sport, right?
Right.
Which without telling them, they're like, just like you're a pro tennis player and go coach a tennis player, even though you don't know anything about tennis. Or
it seems odd, right?
It does.
How can someone who doesn't know a thing about skiing instruct or help someone in skiing perform better? But it's a way of, it's a way of guidance, essentially. And in John Whitmore's book, Coaching for Performance, he describes coaching is unlocking people's potential to maximize their performance. It is helping them to learn rather than teaching them. And that goes against like everything we know as pharmacists on how to instruct people. We naturally want to give people the answer to things. Yes. We don't want them to, it's kind of why motivational interviewing is such a new idea for pharmacy, because it's like, well, if I just tell someone something, why won't they should just do it? Mm-hmm. But we know as human beings, like, look, it's easier to gain weight than it is to maintain a weight. And it's because we're emotional creatures that justify our actions.
Well, I think that's also kind of a barrier for people who, are maybe just finding out about the coaching world. A lot of people who are in that, if you get to that point where you're maybe desperate or whatever your situation is, you kind of sometimes you want the answer right away. How can I fix this in tomorrow, right? Or yesterday, right, if they really wanted it that quick. Because coaching is different with everyone, like you said. To be okay with that, kind of really digging deep and determining, you really need to invest the time. It's not something that's fixed overnight. And I think a lot of people, like in terms of probably a pharmacist state of mind, because that's how we were taught, you kind of want the answer now. And I think that's kind of hard to accept as well, that, it's not going to be that quick. You kind of have to go through the process and dig deep, and you might come out with a completely different answer than you didn't even know existed, or whatever. Could be a completely different category. It might not even be pharmacy. It could be anything.
Exactly. I coached a fellow pharmacist yesterday or 2 days ago, and we talked about him wanting to escape the day-to-day life of being a clinical pharmacist. He, like so many of us, has become disenfranchised, I think is the right word, from our medical model that treats diseases rather than preventing them, and how we pretty much just use medicines as band-aids to fix people's problems. And in his mind in the beginning, he thought the way to escape is by doing this work that I want to do, by eliminating medications from people's lists as a service. And so he thought, I'd like to do this as a business. But through a coaching session with me, we were able to hone down what impact he really wants to make in the world. And at first he thought, I need to escape this. I need to escape this life, right? As you had said, like, we often think our goal in our mind is like the immediate need of what we think we want. But by bringing about awareness in a coaching session, I was able to listen to him and ask questions to actually draw out what he really wanted, which turned out to be What he really wants to do is change our profession. He wants to, not just pharmacy, but all of medicine, to get away from this idea of just treating people with medicine. And so he wants to become now an expert on, for lack of a better word, decreasing polypharmacy for patients. And he's been thinking this way about creating a business, he told me, for years, but he had never taken an action because frankly, he was, a little scared to move into that new direction. But just by coaching, by listening and asking powerful questions to probe people where they're at, you're able to understand what it is you really want and why potentially it could be totally different than where you're going. Chris, I know we shared a little bit of your story in previous episodes, but I remember you and I doing a coaching session, and at the end of it, I remember you kind of wanting an answer from me about, I don't want to do community anymore. Where do I go, Alex? And I didn't give you an answer.
I think, I remember like our first talk, it was like it was pretty much, because it was kind of you, a tryout, right? If we were going to relate this to sports like earlier. And I don't know if I made the cut originally, for you could say, because you're like, pretty much it was a tryout to see if we'd be a good fit together, right? It wasn't just, and that kind of actually took me aback a little bit, because I was like, really? Like, okay, I'm like trying out to be a coachee or your client. And I remember you saying, I'm not really sure. I haven't determined yet how I can help you. I'm not really sure what it is that you need. And that really made me think back. I'm like, okay, like, I'm not really sure what I need. And it, made me a little nervous too, but it made me think about it more. And then I remember you gave me more questions, I believe, to answer and think about. And it kind of forced me to think outside the box even more from where I thought that what was my limit, where I thought I had already thought of and already pondered on, and pretty much determined, okay, this is maybe where I could go, what direction. And I remember had pretty open answers. I think I gave you, they weren't very specific. And I remember our second tryout, you could say, went a lot better. We were kind of able to pinpoint, and focus on things that we thought, after thinking myself and reflecting and then coming together, we were able to determine, okay, it will be a good fit, and this is where we can start. And I think it kind of gave me that nudge that I needed. I really, was stuck. I didn't know where to go. I needed that guidance. I needed someone to be like, well, I this is what I'm hearing, because we're our biggest critic, right? We're holding ourselves back the most. And also we only see things probably one, maybe two ways when you're reflecting on yourself, when someone from the outside maybe could see 10 different ways that you didn't even think about. So that was, I think, the most helpful part for me was kind of having someone, well, how have you looked at it this way? Did you think of this? How about that? And it just kind of guided you to think outside of where you kept getting stuck, where I was in this vicious circle for a year and a half. And it also gave me the confidence that, I think this is going to help. I think this is going to work. And I think that also gives you the motivation to even get the progress you desire that much quicker. You're not going to get it tomorrow, but definitely a lot quicker. And I honestly do think if I did not go into coaching, I would still be where I was, probably struggling more frustrated, more exhausted, not enjoying what I do. So I feel that it really helped me make that transition and open my eyes to what opportunities are out there and how much coaching really is. I mean, there's a lot of things that hold you back, but I feel like coaching is a well worth it investment for sure.
Well, part of our role as career coaches at the Happy PharmD is to bring about awareness. And sometimes that is a little bit of teaching, because for whatever reason, pharmacists, in a way, we've kind of become complacent within our careers. We've taken our 6 figures and kind of just go to work and show up and do the best we can and help our patients. And then we don't think about new opportunities. We're also very risk averse as a profession. And so to think outside of the box is very counterintuitive. So I have to admit that as career coaches, we do our best to help you basically transform into the new kind of pharmacist you want to be, whether that's becoming, a medical writer or a pharma person or an MSL or an academic. We've helped people do that. But a part of it is just bringing awareness to these other fields as well. It's kind of why we're doing this podcast, right? We want to show stories of people who, were at pretty low points in the careers and figured out, hey, there's a strategy to do in order to transition, even during this extremely difficult job market. So I have to admit, I do struggle a little bit with that idea, because I don't want us to become coaches who just tell people what to do. And I don't think we do that. We never recommend a certain path. I've talked with hundreds of pharmacists, and some of them have have hired coaches outside of pharmacy, which is perfectly fine. I did the same thing. I hired coaches who weren't pharmacists, practically because when I was, there was no such thing as a pharmacist coach.
Yep.
And they have weird stories. I spoke with one pharmacist who was told that she should go into sales, and she, just her personality alone, would probably rule that out as an option, because for her, she was an introvert. She struggled with her shyness, and she doesn't like persuasion. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just, I don't know if that was just like a bad career coach, because I don't know this person, nor do I want to judge them or their assessment. But I do have to wonder, like, that's kind of odd.
A little bit of a
recommend
misread.
something like
Yeah.
It'd probably be good to talk about our process.
Yeah, let's do that.
We don't really talk about it because I haven't really described it on the website. I just, basically what I want to do is I want to talk to as many pharmacists as I can and describe it that way, usually with one-on-one, but this is probably a good place for us to do that. Probably should have done it a long time ago. So the way we work with pharmacists typically is we want to talk to you. We want this to be a conversation. It's why if you go to the website, we invite you to speak with one of us from our team. Sometimes it is me, but sometimes it's another pharmacist that works with us. And what we do is we ask you a few questions in a questionnaire, and we want to kind of just see where you're at in your career, what you're struggling with, what you're wanting to move towards. And then from that initial call, we usually set you up with a coach. We can't help everybody, and nor do we want to. While it would be, it's a great problem to have that we've had to hire more pharmacist career coaches, because that's all we do. We only have pharmacists that act as career coaches in the Happy PharmD, and we right now have 5, including me. And Chris, you're well on your way right now. And what we do is, based on your needs and based on what we can usually tell just by asking questions, we then pair you up with a coach. And if you click with that coach, you then set up a career coaching session. It does seem long. It does seem like quite a bit of work. But the reason why we put so much work up front into this process is we want to make sure that, number one, you click really well with your career coach, because they're your secret weapon. They're someone that you rely on for guidance, for helping you go through whatever obstacles are in your way to your career transition. And we also want to do complimentary coaching sessions, because most people have never had a coaching session, and so everyone's got this weird probably picture of in their mind, what is it that they're actually going to be investing in if they hire the coach. And so we like to give that as a sample, kind of let you experience Disney World, as it were, before you buy. We don't, unfortunately at this point, we don't have a reputation like Disney World. One day we'll get there, but for now it's just about experiencing it. And if you love it, that's when we talk about closing a contract with someone to help them move into whatever career path that they're moving towards, whether that is creating a business or growing a business or starting a new career in a different field. It's my full-time energy right now, and my mind is immersed in this. And so I've really enjoyed talking with hundreds of pharmacists, just this year alone. And so that's our process and how we work. And we typically, I should explain that we typically work with people for 3 months minimum.
I was going to say, yeah, if you could explain, once they do sign the contract, what options do they have once they go through there?
Yeah, everyone's is different. And so it's difficult for me to say, across the board, how do we help people? Typically, we work with people for 3 months minimum, and we usually meet at least every other week for somewhere around 60 minutes. And during that time, there's always a goal set in every coaching session. We follow, the founders of coaching, their model, Coaching for Performance. And practically every coaching session starts off with a goal of what is it that we're going to achieve in our time together. And at the end of it, there's always an action plan, and show up at the next time and report wins or obstacles, and then problem solve those obstacles in the coaching session. And so we do sometimes work with people typically longer. If it's business related, usually it is 6 months to see significant results. And I should also mention, we don't charge by the hour. Some people do that. And I've done that. I've hired coaches in the past where I've had to pay by the hour. And when I did that, it made me realize like I feel bad if I'm taking more time away from them because I don't, well, number one, I feel like I need to pay them more if I do that. But it also makes me kind of mad if in the past I had one coach who talked a lot.
I was going to say, did it make you more conscious of every minute and every second?
Exactly.
Because you're
Yeah.
more focused on that than actually making progress.
Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking like, you know, getting kind of mad at this guy because I'm like, I'm paying you right now and you're just telling me a story, and it's good. It's fine. But like, let's get to the heart of the issue here. Let's not storytell. And so we don't do a whole lot of storytelling unless it's to, I mean, give an idea of something of what could be done, but it's not 10 minutes long like some people do. So we also do what I like to call unlimited laser calls, where when something comes up, when you receive an interview request and you have a question, you know, that's when you need to reach out to your coach and ask the question via text or a phone call or email or whatever. And our coaches are there for you. You know, they'll set up the time, make it happen, because we want to brag about everyone who works with us. We want to say, hey, they worked with us. They were at this crummy job and now they're here and they're really happier. So, you know, another thought here, Chris, it's actually, you're the quintessential example of this. So you were in a really tough job.
Yep.
And things weren't very easy for you and it was sucking your energy dry, right? Well, after you moved into the new job, you all of a sudden had more energy to do different things, didn't you?
Yeah, I think, I guess I was also one of those unique cases where I wasn't in the 3-month time frame, right?
True.
With coaching with you, because we had our first daughter in that time frame, so we kind of had to make a couple adjustments to fit that in.
Yeah, I allowed you to have your kid, and then we continued coaching afterwards.
Yeah, it was very, very nice of you to, you know, let me focus on that for a little bit.
We're a flexible company. Yeah, we'll work with you based on your circumstances.
So I believe our last meeting was more of kind of determining. Well, I mean, we pretty much did kind of come to the end all of in terms of what I wanted to do, and I kind of had a few ideas. You know, I wanted to write a book, and then you kind of came up with the idea of why don't we do this podcast, which is it was the same idea, just doing it in a different format, right? And it almost turned into more of like a job interview or job offer, not interview, to kind of work together, right? But yeah, I think one of the first things that I told you was I just have, like, especially when I started this new role, was that you know, what else can I do? Because I had more time. I wasn't as tired. You know, I was just looked forward to every day instead. I was learning something new, and still am learning something new every day. I wasn't stressing anywhere near as much, if at all, you know, on my way to work before, where I was, you know, kind of getting anxious right away, right before on my drive to work. You know, now it's just more, it's nowhere near the same in a good way. I remember the first thing saying, I want to do more now. You know, I have time, and I was just like, I'm not as exhausted. I can invest more time into something as a side hustle, or, you know, whatever. It didn't have to be pharmacy related. It could be anything. I found myself having, you know, my life back in a piece, in that matter, where my energy wasn't sucked dry from me in my career, my past job. And I was able to focus on finding things that I also had a lot of passion for, that wasn't just my job, was also a side hustle. But in a way, it was that I wanted to help people that were in my same boat, which a lot of people are currently and in the past. And I also felt that it was kind of a hard thing to determine with me as an example. It was hard to determine what I exactly wanted to do and what options were out there, right? And I thought it would be helpful to, like what we're doing now, is to show people what is out there. There's so many options right now, and especially even now with our field being so saturated and hard to find a job, you can create your own job. There's so many things out there. It can be pharmacy related, like we said. Doesn't have to be, but there's so many things that, like when you were in school, if you said that you were going to be a coach, you probably would have been like, what is that? It's not even a thing. Like,
yeah.
You know, coach, you know, a sport, or what do you mean? So, or let alone in pharmacy, right? As a career coach, pharmacy specific. So I feel like if you past you compared to now would have been like, what are you talking about? That's not even a thing. So, I mean, who knows 10 years from now, what other job is someone going to just all of a sudden create, and we can help people find that job. So I feel like, started to keep going on there.
Well, what I wanted to point out is that transformation is very common in pharmacists who make a transition out of a crummy to a better job. That, it's, for most people, it's good. And some people are just satisfied with that. And there's
Yeah.
absolutely nothing wrong with it. It is an admirable thing to just do your job and to do it well. And there's something grand, though, that I enjoy finding people who make that transition and then do something more. Like they realize that all of a sudden the world is really open to them and there's so much that they can do. A lot of people who've made job transitions that we work with have done some really interesting things where they're starting new businesses or they're starting to become subject matter experts on topics. They're getting asked to speak at things, they're publishing papers, that are starting businesses, that are starting consultancies. And it's, in my opinion, I think it's because of that transformation from feeling like you're a prisoner in your pharmacy. There's nothing you can do. No one values you. No one cares about your resume, to all of a sudden getting extremely curious about something, solving problems for people, and maybe getting a new job after that. That's why I think this path that we teach people is indispensable, because you go from feeling valueless to be all of a sudden creating a lot of value for someone else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what our coaching is all about. And every single person that we've shared a story with, or a success story, is, on a completely different trajectory for their careers. And like, there's no better work in my life that I could ever dedicate myself to, even though right now there's other things I could have done with my coaching ability. This is, at first it started as a passion project, but now it's like, it's my life to change pharmacy one person at a time.
And I think it's
So,
like, no, I didn't mean to jump in there. It's
no, go for it.
to look at your work-life balance from let's say our past pharmacists when they started out with us to present. It's tremendously different. It's just amazing, right? And that's what it's all about. You don't want to feel stuck. You want to actually have that freedom to truly find out what gives you joy and happiness in your career and life. So
it's almost like you see people, it's like seeing a really good friend with depression all of a sudden changing, the next month. Some of the people that we work with, it's burnout is what it is. And they're really tired, disengaged from work, feeling like there's no accomplishments being happening, and feeling like the people that they wanted to serve are just problems, to all of a sudden changing jobs, just meaning like, wow, I'm really making a difference. And their life just all of a sudden blossoms into this new area of life of, who knows where it'll lead them next. But I think we could probably talk a lot more about the stories of coaching, but I wanted to do this episode because I know that I don't talk about coaching enough. I don't describe what it is to people, and people come to me and just like, what is it? Do you tell me what to do, or you make my resume better, or you give me interview tips? That's a part of it. Everyone who's in our coaching program gets, access to our video library that teaches all of that stuff, but that's teaching it. But coaching is about making that transformation happen within you so that you're on a completely different, indispensable path.
do you
I feel
think
like I'm sorry.
no,
I was about to say, I think I've said all I wanted to about it, and I've needed to say it for a while, but you were about to ask me a question. So
I do have one
more.
well, I kind of, to go back to the coaching process there and the beginning, just wanted to quickly, for people listening there, what if you could break it down to maybe 3 to 5 categories in terms of the pharmacists that come to us? If it's either, X percentage is suffering from burnout, X percentage is just want something new. How would you break it down, just for people, like, so they're curious, am I, do I fit into? And I feel like, we can pretty much, any category really can work, but it just, so people are kind of, where do I fall in that percentage of that group of people that are seeking help? What do you see a majority, would you say?
I would say, if you're looking at like practice areas, I would say probably about 60% of the people that come to us are working community. That's a pretty large percentage. The next is practice areas. So it's a lot of like high level clinicians that frankly are burned out, by the rigmarole of the practice. You wouldn't think that, I know that a lot of people in retail think like, hospitals so much better. Sometimes it's just as bad, especially if you're working midnights. And then the remaining people are people who are in non-traditional settings. So there's a vast array from pharma to medical affairs to, I don't know, toxicology, I suppose, even, who, are looking for that next thing. And they don't know if that means maybe I start a business, maybe I start a consultancy, maybe I switch careers entirely. And we help them consider what their options are and help them create a strategy towards that end goal. If you're thinking about like, what are the conditions? I would say probably 70% of people are struggling with burnout. That doesn't mean these people are less because of it or that they are weaker, at nothing like that at all. It's just one thing has led to another, and years of practice has led to small, tiny decisions that makes them feel like they've gone against their own inner ethics and morals to do what they do. They want to do more. They want to help people, but for whatever reason, they aren't able to do that in their workplace. It's interesting, Chris, when I started off coaching, I really got into the area of like business coaching. I had some success. I figured out how to do it on my own, and people were coming to me with questions and wanting guidance. And so that's where I stuck. And when you're coaching people in business, these are like highly motivated people, highly driven people accomplishing really big things. And we love it when we work with those people at the Happy PharmD.
I mean, I feel like, if you're out there and you just really don't, you feel stuck, you don't know what you want to do, there are people out there that can help you. We want to be those people. I know it's a big step to go from feeling like you can handle it yourself to asking for a hand, to get you through this to the next step. And it's okay. It's normal. It was a struggle for me. Like, I honestly, it was hard for me to want to go out and ask for help. And I'm not sure if it was for you, Alex, in the past, but a lot of people, I think it's hard for them to just, hey, I need help, and can you help me? Instead of just trying to be stuck where you are. And I think we're like that as pharmacists. We try to solve the problem ourselves first, and until either you accept it or you're okay with asking for help from someone else. So feel free to reach out to us, and we really want to help you out and get to that next step. And it could be something you already have in mind, or it could be something you never thought of before.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris, for hosting this episode.
Anytime. Thanks for being on, Alex.
If you've ever considered coaching and you would want to talk to a coach, we have our calendars open. And if you go to the website, thehappypharmd.com, and click on coach or coaching, you can find a calendar there to book a time to speak with myself or someone from our team. And we'd love to see if maybe we can help you with whatever your goal is, your aspirations, and help you get there.